The quiet kindness. Tyler Davis woke up to the dim morning light filtering through the cracks in the blinds of his shared room at Maple Leaf Orphanage. At 10 years old, Tyler had grown used to the creaky beds, the uneven floorboards, and the faint smell of old wood that always lingered in the building. The orphanage wasn't the worst place, but it wasn't home. Not the kind of home he dreamed of late at night. His alarm clock, a tiny wind-up model he'd found in a donation box, ticked faintly as he got dressed. He slipped on a pair of faded jeans, a plain gray t-shirt, and sneakers that were a little too big. Each morning followed a routine. Wake up before the others, check his few belongings, and head to breakfast. Tyler wasn't sure why he checked his things. No one had ever stolen from him, but there was a kind of comfort in knowing his life's possessions. A notebook with a worn leather cover, a dull pencil, and a photo of his parents he barely remembered were still there. The orphanage buzzed with quiet activity as he walked to the dining hall. The staff was already busy preparing for the day, some chatting quietly over coffee while others hurriedly organized papers. Breakfast was the same as always, a bowl of cereal and a slice of bread. Tyler ate quickly, saving half of his bread to slip into his backpack for later. Once outside, he was met by the noise of the city, Manhattan's bustling streets, where people hurried by without sparing a glance. Vendors shouted about deals, cars honked impatiently, and the occasional dog barked. Tyler liked this chaos. It made him feel small, invisible, and safe. As he walked toward school, something caught his eye. An old man sitting on the sidewalk near the corner. His beard was unkempt, his clothes ragged and layered, and he held a paper cup out, hoping for spare change. Tyler noticed how people avoided him, their gazes darting away as though ignoring him could make him disappear. The sight tugged at something deep inside Tyler. He slowed his steps, hesitating. He didn't have money. He never did, but he had his half slice of bread. His stomach growled at the thought, but his heart won the battle. Without overthinking, he pulled the bread from his backpack and held it out. The man looked up, his tired blue eyes meeting Tyler's curious brown ones. "For me?" the man asked softly. Tyler nodded. "It's not much, but yeah." The man took the bread, his hands trembling slightly. "Thank you," he said, his voice carrying a weight of gratitude that Tyler didn't expect. Tyler gave a small, shy smile before walking away. At school, Tyler kept to himself as usual. He was a good student, quiet, hardworking, and polite. But he never felt like he belonged. When the teacher asked the class to write about their families, Tyler's pen hovered over the paper. He wrote about the staff at the orphanage, keeping it short and impersonal. During lunch, Tyler's sandwich felt smaller than usual, but he didn't regret his decision. The image of the old man's grateful face lingered in his mind. That evening, back at the orphanage, Tyler stared at the ceiling above his bed. His thoughts wandered to the old man. Who was he? Why was he out there? Tyler knew what it felt like to be invisible, and something about the man's eyes made him wonder if he felt the same. The next morning, Tyler repeated his routine, but with a subtle difference. He packed a slightly larger piece of bread for lunch. On the way to school, he stopped by the same corner. The man was there, his beard catching the morning light. Without hesitation, Tyler handed him the bread. "Thanks, kid," the man said, studying Tyler with an expression that seemed curious and kind. "See you tomorrow," Tyler replied, surprising himself. The man nodded but didn't say anything more. Over the next week, this became their silent ritual. Each morning, Tyler would offer the man part of his lunch, and the man would accept it with quiet gratitude. The man rarely spoke, but Tyler noticed things. His hands, though rough, moved carefully, and his voice, though soft, held a certain dignity. One day, the man finally broke the silence. "Why do you do it?" he asked as Tyler handed him a sandwich. Tyler shrugged. "I know what it's like to feel like no one sees you." The man nodded slowly, his eyes thoughtful. "You're a good kid." Tyler didn't respond, But those words stayed with him all day. He wasn't used to hearing things like that. A stranger's eyes. The following week brought small but noticeable changes to Tyler's routine. Each morning, he packed his lunch and walked to school, stopping by the corner where the old man sat. The exchanges were brief. Bread or part of a sandwich passed from one hand to another, but something about them felt significant, like a secret he shared with the world. The man never asked for more than Tyler offered, and Tyler never expected anything in return. It was just something he did, quietly, consistently. But one morning, as Tyler approached the corner, he noticed something different. The man was sitting there as usual, but today he wasn't holding out his cup. Instead, he sat with his hands folded on his lap, staring at the busy street ahead. Tyler hesitated, wondering if something had happened. "Morning," Tyler said as he stepped closer, holding out a piece of bread. The man looked up and smiled faintly. "Morning, kid. You're early today." Tyler shrugged. "Not really. You okay?" The man nodded but didn't take the bread right away. Instead, he gestured to the spot on the sidewalk beside him. "You're always rushing off. Sit for a second." Tyler blinked in surprise. He'd never thought of sitting with the man before. The idea made him nervous. What if someone saw them? What if the orphanage staff found out? But there was something about the man's eyes, calm and steady, that made him sit down anyway. The sidewalk was cold, and Tyler felt the city's buzz more intensely from this angle. Feet rushed past him, voices carried snippets of conversations, and the occasional car horn blared in the distance. For a moment, he felt as invisible as the man must have felt every day. "Why do you do it?" the man asked, breaking the silence. "Do what?" Tyler asked, though he already knew the answer. "Bring me food. You barely have enough for yourself." Tyler thought about this for a moment. "I guess it just feels wrong not to." The man nodded thoughtfully. "You're different, kid. Most people walk right past. They don't even see me." Tyler frowned. "I see you." The man smiled, but there was a sadness in it. "That's rare. People don't notice what they don't want to see." Tyler didn't know what to say to that. He glanced down at his sneakers, scuffed and slightly too big for his feet. He'd always felt like he didn't belong, like he wasn't enough for people to notice. Maybe that was why he couldn't ignore the man. "What's your name?" the man asked after a moment. "Tyler." "Nice to meet you, Tyler. I'm Sam." Tyler gave a small smile. "Nice to meet you too, Sam." They sat in silence for a few moments before Tyler stood up. "I gotta get to school." Sam nodded, taking the bread Tyler offered. "Thanks, kid. See you tomorrow." Tyler walked away, feeling lighter somehow. It wasn't much, a name and a few words, but it was more than he'd shared with most people. That afternoon, back at the orphanage, Tyler overheard the staff talking about an upcoming inspection. The social services team was visiting soon, and everyone seemed on edge. Tyler knew what that meant: budget cuts, reevaluations, and the possibility of being moved to another facility. The thought made his stomach twist. He didn't love the orphanage, but it was familiar. Moving meant starting over, and Tyler hated starting over. "Tyler," one of the staff members called, snapping him out of his thoughts. He turned to see Ms. Reed, one of the kinder staff members, walking toward him. She was holding a stack of papers and looked stressed. "Can you help me organize these for the meeting tomorrow?" "Sure," Tyler said, taking the papers. He spent the next hour in the office, sorting through files and stapling documents. It wasn't exciting, but it kept his mind busy. By the time he finished, the other kids were already gathering for dinner. Tyler grabbed his plate and sat at the end of the long table. The other children talked and laughed, but Tyler stayed quiet, lost in his thoughts. He wondered if Sam had eaten the bread he gave him that morning, or if he was still sitting on that corner, waiting for someone to notice him. The next morning, Tyler woke up early, as usual. He packed his lunch and walked to school, stopping by Sam's corner on the way. This time, Sam was sitting with his back against the wall, his eyes closed. Tyler hesitated, unsure if he should disturb him. "Sam," he said softly. Sam's eyes opened, and he smiled. "Morning, Tyler. You're back." "Of course," Tyler said, handing him a piece of bread. "You okay?" Sam nodded but didn't say much. Tyler sat down beside him again, feeling the cold of the sidewalk seep through his jeans. For a moment, they just watched the city move around them. "Do you have family?" Tyler asked suddenly, surprising himself with the question. Sam's smile faded. He looked down at the bread in his hands, his expression unreadable. "Not anymore." "I don't either," Tyler said quietly. "Not really." Sam looked at him, his blue eyes softening. "I figured. You've got that look." "What look?" "The one that says you know what it's like to be alone." Tyler didn't respond, but he knew Sam was right. He didn't like to talk about it, but the loneliness was always there, a quiet ache he couldn't shake. "You're a good kid, Tyler," Sam said after a moment. "Don't lose that." Tyler frowned. "What do you mean?" Sam shook his head, smiling faintly. "Just don't let the world change you. It'll try, but don't let it." Tyler didn't understand what Sam meant, but the words stuck with him as he walked to school. For the rest of the day, he thought about their conversation. He wondered what had happened to Sam's family and why he lived on the streets. He wanted to ask more, but he didn't know if it was his place. That evening, as Tyler sat in his room, he pulled out his notebook and started writing. He didn't know why, but he felt the need to put his thoughts on paper. He wrote about Sam, about the way he seemed both strong and fragile at the same time. He wrote about the way the city rushed past him without a second glance, and he wrote about the way Sam's words made him feel, like maybe, just maybe, he mattered. The invisible ties. The days passed, and Tyler's routine with Sam became a quiet cornerstone of his life. Each morning, he packed his modest lunch, walked to school, and stopped by Sam's corner. Their conversations grew longer, though always in fragments, like scattered pieces of a puzzle that neither of them felt the need to finish. Tyler didn't ask too many questions, and Sam never pushed for answers. Still, in the silence between their words, a bond was forming, fragile yet unbreakable. That Thursday morning, the city felt colder than usual. The wind whipped down the streets, carrying with it the bite of impending winter. Tyler wrapped his thin jacket tighter around himself as he approached Sam's corner. To his relief, Sam was there, though he looked different. His usual calm demeanor was tinged with something Tyler couldn't quite place. Nervousness, maybe, or exhaustion. "Morning, Tyler," Sam greeted, his voice warm despite the weather. "Morning, Sam." Tyler handed over half his sandwich as he always did. "You look tired." Sam gave a small chuckle. "Not much sleep these days. The cold's creeping in faster than I expected." "Where do you sleep?" Tyler asked, then immediately regretted it. "I mean, you don't have to tell me if you don't want to." Sam didn't seem offended. "Different places. Shelters, sometimes, but they fill up fast. Other times, wherever I can find a quiet spot." Tyler nodded, unsure of what to say. He hated the thought of Sam sleeping in the cold, but he didn't know how to help. "You ever think about the future, kid?" Sam asked suddenly, breaking the silence. Tyler blinked. "The future?" "Yeah. What do you want to be? Where do you want to go?" Tyler hesitated. No one had ever asked him that before. "I don't know," he admitted. "I guess I just want a family. A home." Sam's expression softened. "That's a good dream, Tyler. Don't let go of it." Tyler wanted to ask Sam about his own dreams, but before he could, the bell of a nearby church chimed, signaling the time. He jumped to his feet. "I gotta go, or I'll be late." Sam nodded. "Go on then. I'll see you tomorrow." As Tyler walked away, he glanced back over his shoulder. Sam was still sitting there, the sandwich in his hands, staring out at the bustling street. Something about the sight made Tyler's chest ache. At school, Tyler found it hard to concentrate. His mind kept drifting back to Sam, to the quiet sadness in his eyes, and the way he'd asked about the future. Tyler had never given much thought to his future. He'd always been too busy surviving the present. But now, the idea stuck with him, persistent and unshakable. During lunch, as he picked at the remnants of his sandwich, Tyler noticed a group of boys laughing and talking loudly at the next table. They were trading stories about their families, weekend trips, birthday surprises, and movie nights. Tyler listened without meaning to, his heart sinking with every word. He'd never had those things, and he probably never would. After school, Tyler took the long way back to the orphanage, hoping the walk would clear his head. He passed by Sam's corner, but this time it was empty. A strange sense of loss washed over him. He'd grown used to seeing Sam there, like a constant in his otherwise unpredictable life. Without him, the corner felt wrong, bare, and lifeless. When Tyler arrived at the orphanage, the atmosphere inside was tense. The staff was bustling around, preparing for the social services inspection. Papers were being shuffled, rooms tidied, and children instructed to be on their best behavior. Tyler kept his head down, avoiding eye contact, as he made his way to his room. "Tyler," Ms. Reed's voice called after him. He turned to see her approaching, clipboard in hand. "Can you come to the office for a moment?" "Did I do something wrong?" Tyler asked, his heart sinking. Ms. Reed smiled gently. "No, nothing like that. Just a quick meeting." In the office, Tyler found himself sitting across from a woman he didn't recognize. She was dressed in a sharp suit and had a kind yet professional demeanor. A social worker, Tyler guessed. "Hi, Tyler," the woman said, her voice warm. "My name's Miss Collins. I'm here to talk to you about your situation here at the orphanage." Tyler nodded, his hands fidgeting in his lap. He wasn't sure where this was going, but he didn't like the way it made him feel. Exposed, like someone was peeling back layers he'd worked hard to keep hidden. "I understand you've been here for quite a while," Miss Collins continued. "The staff speaks very highly of you. They say you're polite, hardworking, and kind." Tyler shrugged. "I just try to do what I'm supposed to." Miss Collins smiled. "That's a good quality, Tyler. Now, I need to ask you something important. Have you ever thought about being adopted?" The question hit Tyler like a freight train. He opened his mouth to speak, but no words came out. He had thought about it, of course. Dreamed about it, even, but the idea always felt so far away, like something that happened to other kids, not him. I guess," he said finally, "but no one's ever wanted to." Ms. Collins' smile faltered, just for a moment. "Well, that might be changing soon. Someone has expressed interest in meeting you." Tyler's heart leaked into his throat. "Who?" "I can't say just yet," Ms. Collins replied. "But they've been observing you for some time, and believe you're a very special young man." The words should have made Tyler happy, but instead they filled him with confusion and doubt. Why now? Why him? That evening, Tyler sat on the edge of his bed, staring at the notebook in his lap. He thought about Sam, about the mysterious person Miss Collins had mentioned, and about the possibility of leaving the orphanage. The idea scared him. The orphanage wasn't perfect, but it was what he knew. Out there, everything was uncertain. As he flipped through the pages of his notebook, his thoughts drifted back to Sam's question. What do you want to be? Where do you want to go? Tyler didn't know the answers yet, but for the first time, he realized he wanted to find them. The next morning, Tyler woke up earlier than usual. The sky outside was still dark as he got dressed and packed his lunch. He walked to Sam's corner, half expecting it to be empty again. But to his relief, Sam was there, sitting cross-legged on the sidewalk. "You're early," Sam said, his voice carrying a note of surprise. "So are you," Tyler replied, handing him the usual piece of bread. Sam smiled, taking it. "Thanks, kid." For a moment, they sat in silence, watching the city wake up around them. Then, without looking at Sam, Tyler asked, "Why do you think some people get families and others don't?" Sam didn't answer right away. When he finally spoke, his voice was soft. "I think, sometimes, life doesn't make sense. But that doesn't mean you don't deserve one." Tyler nodded, though the words didn't fully comfort him. "Do you think I'll ever get one?" Sam turned to him, his blue eyes steady. "Yeah, Tyler, I think you will." Tyler wanted to believe him. He really did. But as he walked away, heading toward school, he couldn't shake the feeling that hope was a dangerous thing to hold on to. The storm within. Tyler's days began to blur together as the mystery surrounding the potential adoption hung over him like a shadow. Every interaction with the orphanage staff felt different now, as though they knew something he didn't. The other children began whispering about him too, their curiosity quickly turning into envy. "You think you're special now, don't you?" One of the older boys, Eric, sneered as they passed each other in the hallway. Tyler didn't respond. He'd learned long ago that staying quiet was the best way to avoid fights. But inside, Tyler's mind was anything but quiet. The following morning, Tyler's routine brought him back to Sam's corner, though today the air felt heavy with the promise of rain. Tyler handed Sam the usual piece of bread, but this time he hesitated before sitting down. "Something on your mind, kid?" Sam asked, his eyes sharp despite the weariness in his face. Tyler sat beside him, pulling his knees to his chest. "I think someone wants to adopt me." Sam didn't respond right away. He studied Tyler's face, his own expression unreadable. "That's a good thing, isn't it?" "I don't know," Tyler admitted. "It's scary. What if they don't like me? What if it doesn't work out?" Sam nodded slowly, as though he understood more than Tyler expected. "Let me tell you something, kid. People like you and me, we spend so much time worrying about what could go wrong that we forget about what could go right." Tyler frowned. "What do you mean?" Sam shifted, resting his arms on his knees. "I mean, you've got a chance here. A real chance. Someone sees something in you. Something good. That's rare. Don't throw it away just because you're scared." Tyler thought about that for a long time, even after he left Sam's corner and headed to school. The words stayed with him, gnawing at the edges of his doubt. That afternoon, Tyler returned to the orphanage to find the atmosphere more tense than ever. Ms. Reed was pacing the hallway, her clipboard clutched tightly to her chest. The children were unusually quiet, their whispers subdued as they watched her with wary eyes. "Tyler," Ms. Reed called, spotting him near the staircase. "Can you come to the office, please?" Tyler followed her, his stomach twisting with nerves. Inside the office, he found Ms. Collins, the social worker, waiting for him. She smiled warmly, but Tyler could see the seriousness behind her eyes. "Tyler, we've arranged a meeting with the person interested in adopting you," Ms. Collins began, her tone gentle but firm. "It's not a guarantee, just an introduction. If you're uncomfortable at any point, you can say so. This is your choice, okay?" Tyler nodded, though his heart was pounding. "When is the meeting?" "Tomorrow," Ms. Collins said. "They'll be coming here to meet you." That night, Tyler lay awake in bed, staring at the cracks in the ceiling. The other children were already asleep, their soft snores filling the quiet room. But Tyler's mind raced with questions he couldn't answer. Who was this person? Why did they want him? What if he wasn't enough for them? The thought of leaving the orphanage both excited and terrified him. He'd spent so long dreaming of a family, of a home, but now that the possibility was real, it felt too big to handle. He felt like he was standing on the edge of a cliff, unsure whether to leap or stay where it was safe. The next morning, Tyler woke up early, as always. He dressed quickly and headed out, his usual routine feeling oddly hollow. When he reached Sam's corner, he found the old man already waiting, as though he'd been expecting Tyler. "You look like you've seen a ghost," Sam said, his voice light, but his eyes serious. Tyler sat down beside him, clutching the sandwich he brought. I'm meeting them today. The person who wants to adopt me. Sam nodded, chewing thoughtfully on the bread Tyler handed him. Big day. Yeah, Tyler said quietly. I don't know what to do. Sam leaned back against the wall, his gaze fixed on the busy street ahead. You're overthinking it, kid. Just be yourself. If they're the right person, they'll see that. But what if they don't? Tyler asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Sam turned to him, his expression soft but firm. Then they're not the right person, but you'll never know if you don't try. Tyler nodded, though his chest still felt tight. He didn't know why, but something about Sam's words always seemed to make the world a little clearer. The rest of the day passed in a blur. Tyler went through the motions at school, barely paying attention to his lessons. By the time he returned to the orphanage, his nerves were frayed. Miss Collins was waiting for him in the hallway, her kind smile doing little to calm his anxiety. They're here, she said gently. Are you ready? Tyler took a deep breath and nodded. The meeting room was smaller than Tyler expected, with a round table and a few chairs. Sitting at the table was a man Tyler didn't recognize, though there was something faintly familiar about him. He was older, with neatly combed silver hair and a kind smile. He wore a suit that looked expensive, but his posture was relaxed, almost casual. Hi, Tyler, the man said, his voice warm. My name is Samuel. Tyler froze. Samuel. The name hit him like a bolt of lightning. He stared at the man, his mind racing. The suit, the clean-shaven face, the confident demeanor, it was all so different, yet the eyes were the same. The same piercing blue eyes he'd seen every morning on the street corner. You're Sam? Tyler asked, his voice barely audible. Samuel nodded, his smile softening. I am. I owe you an explanation. Tyler didn't know what to say. He felt like the ground had been pulled out from under him. All this time, the man he'd been sharing his lunch with, the man he thought was homeless, had been someone entirely different. Why? Tyler finally managed to ask. Why did you pretend? Samuel's expression grew serious. Because I wanted to see who you really were. I've spent most of my life surrounded by people who only care about money, about appearances. I wanted to know if there were still people out there who cared about something more. And you, Tyler, you proved to me that kindness still exists. Tyler felt a mix of emotions, confusion, anger, gratitude, all swirling together in a way he couldn't untangle. So this was a test. In a way, Samuel admitted. But it wasn't just that. I saw something in you, Tyler, something special. And I want to give you the chance to have the life you deserve. Tyler stared at him, his heart pounding. He wanted to believe Samuel, but the idea felt too big, too impossible. Why me? Samuel leaned forward, his gaze steady. Because you're the kind of person the world needs more of. And because I believe in you, Tyler. For a moment, neither of them spoke. Then, slowly, Tyler nodded. He didn't have all the answers yet, but for the first time, he felt a glimmer of hope. A test of trust. Tyler couldn't stop the whirlwind of emotions spinning through him after his meeting with Samuel. The man he'd known as a quiet, kind stranger on the corner was now offering him the one thing he'd dreamed of his entire life. A family. But was it real? Could he trust someone who had spent weeks in disguise, testing people without revealing his true self? The orphanage was quieter than usual that evening. The other children seemed to sense something had shifted. Tyler caught their sidelong glances and whispered conversations, but he was too lost in his own thoughts to care. As he lay in bed staring at the ceiling, the same question replayed in his mind. Why me? The next morning, Tyler woke up earlier than usual. The streets were still dark when he slipped out of the orphanage, his backpack slung over one shoulder. He needed answers, and there was only one place he could think to go. When he reached the corner where Samuel had sat every morning, it was empty. Tyler felt a pang of disappointment, but he didn't leave. He waited, standing against the brick wall as the city slowly came to life around him. Vendors set up their carts, office workers hurried by, and the hum of traffic grew louder. Just as Tyler was about to give up, he saw him. Samuel, dressed in a simple coat and scarf, was walking toward him with a thermos in hand. The sight of him looking so polished yet unassuming made Tyler's chest tighten. "You're up early," Samuel said as he approached, a smile tugging at the corners of his mouth. "I had to see you," Tyler replied, his voice firmer than he expected. Samuel nodded, as though he'd been expecting this. "Let's talk." They walked to a nearby park, where Samuel led Tyler to a quiet bench beneath a tree. The air was crisp, and a light fog lingered over the grass. Samuel offered Tyler a cup of coffee from his thermos, but Tyler shook his head. "Why did you really do it?" Tyler asked, breaking the silence. "Why pretend to be homeless? Why watch me?" Samuel sighed, his breath visible in the cold morning air. "Because I needed to know if you were the kind of person I thought you were. I've spent my life building wealth, Tyler. I have everything I could ever need, but none of it matters if I don't use it for something good." Tyler frowned. "But why me? I'm just a kid." "Exactly," Samuel said, his voice soft but steady. "You're just a kid, and yet you showed more kindness and compassion than most adults I've met. You didn't know who I was or what I could offer, but you still helped me. That means something." Tyler stared at the ground, his thoughts tangled. "What if I'm not what you think I am? What if I mess up?" Samuel leaned forward, his gaze unwavering. "Then we figure it out together. I'm not looking for perfection, Tyler. I'm looking for someone who's willing to try. And I see that in you." Tyler's chest tightened. He wanted to believe Samuel, but years of disappointment and rejection had taught him to be cautious. "What if you change your mind?" "I won't," Samuel said firmly. "But you don't have to take my word for it. This isn't something we'll decide overnight. You'll have time to think, to get to know me. We'll do this the right way." For the first time, Tyler felt a small flicker of hope, fragile, but real. Back at the orphanage, Tyler found himself at the center of attention. The other children's whispers had grown louder, their jealousy more apparent. Eric, the oldest boy in the group, cornered Tyler in the hallway. "So, you're the lucky one, huh?" Eric said, his tone dripping with sarcasm. "The rich guy picked you." "I didn't ask for this," Tyler said quietly, trying to sidestep him. "Yeah, right," Eric sneered. "You've been sucking up to everyone since you got here. You think you're better than us now." "I don't think that," Tyler replied, his voice firm despite the anger bubbling inside him. "I didn't choose any of this." Eric scoffed and stepped aside. But Tyler could feel the weight of the other children's eyes on him. For the first time, he felt like an outsider in the place he'd called home for so long. Later that evening, Miss Collins met with Tyler to discuss the next steps. "Samuel has been thoroughly vetted," she explained. "He's passed all the background checks, and he's been working with social services to ensure this process is handled carefully. But Tyler, this decision is yours. If you don't feel ready, you can say no." Tyler hesitated. The idea of saying no felt safe, but it also felt wrong. He thought about the nights he'd spent lying awake, dreaming of a family. He thought about Samuel's words, about trust and trying. "I want to meet him again," Tyler said finally. "I want to know more." The next week, Samuel invited Tyler to his home, a modest brownstone in the heart of the city. It was nothing like the sprawling mansions Tyler had imagined. Instead, it was warm and inviting, with bookshelves lining the walls and a fireplace crackling in the living room. "This is home," Samuel said, leading Tyler inside. "I wanted you to see it for yourself." Tyler wandered through the rooms, his fingers brushing over the spines of the books, the edges of picture frames. It felt strange, stepping into someone else's life, but it also felt comforting. Over dinner, Samuel told Tyler more about himself, his career, his late wife, and his decision to live simply despite his wealth. "Money can't buy happiness," he said, his eyes meeting Tyler's. "But it can create opportunities, and I want to share those opportunities with you." Tyler nodded, though he still felt a twinge of doubt. "What if I don't fit in here?" Samuel smiled. "Tyler, this isn't about fitting in. This is about building something new, together." That night, as Tyler lay in bed back at the orphanage, he felt something he hadn't felt in years. Hope. It was small, fragile, and uncertain, but it was there, glowing faintly in the dark. He didn't know what the future would hold, but for the first time, he felt ready to take the leap. The leap of faith. The days leading up to Tyler's decision felt like the slow ticking of a clock, each moment stretching longer, more loaded with the weight of uncertainty. He had never been this close to making a choice that would alter the course of his life. Every part of him wanted to say yes, to leap into the unknown and accept the family Samuel was offering. But there was another part, buried deep within him, that feared what would come next. The orphanage had felt like home in a strange, imperfect way. The staff, though overworked, had always cared for him. The other children, though distant and sometimes unkind, were familiar faces in a place that wasn't his home, but where he knew how to survive. Leaving it all behind, stepping into a world that felt too big, too full of unknowns. Was he ready for that? That morning, Tyler woke up earlier than usual. The sky was overcast, the clouds hanging heavy as if the world itself was holding its breath. The streets of Manhattan bustled with the usual frenetic energy, but Tyler felt strangely disconnected from it all. He packed his bag and checked his few belongings. His old notebook, his worn pencil, and the picture of his parents, which had become a symbol of a past he could barely remember. Before he left for school, Tyler stood in front of the mirror in the orphanage bathroom. For a moment, he studied his reflection. A thin, quiet boy with big brown eyes and tousled hair. He looked like any other kid, yet he felt like he was standing on the precipice of something enormous. He wondered if this moment, this decision, was the one that would define him for the rest of his life. At school, Tyler could barely concentrate. The words from his teachers, the laughter of the other kids, the chatter in the hallways. Everything felt distant. His mind kept drifting back to Samuel and the promise of a new life. The thought made his stomach twist. What if Samuel changed his mind? What if he didn't fit in with this new family? What if the weight of expectations became too much to bear? During lunch, as Tyler sat alone at his usual spot, he overheard a conversation between two girls at the next table. They were talking about their families, how they spent weekends together, how their parents made them feel safe. Tyler's heart ached as they laughed, and the familiar pang of loneliness settled deeper within him. He tried not to dwell on it, focusing instead on the sandwich in front of him. But no matter how hard he tried, his mind kept returning to Samuel. What would it be like to have someone care for you? To not be invisible anymore? The thought both comforted and terrified him. That afternoon, Tyler walked back to the orphanage with heavy steps. He passed by the same street corner where he had first met Sam. The bench was empty, and for the first time, Tyler didn't stop to check if Sam was there. He had already made up his mind. There was nothing more Sam could say that would change things. The man had done his part, showing Tyler kindness, patience, and giving him a glimpse of what family could be. Tyler walked through the familiar doors of the orphanage, past the staff who nodded at him without really seeing him, and climbed the stairs to his room. As he sat on his bed, staring out the window, he thought about what Samuel had said. This is about building something new, together. Tyler had always known what it was like to have nothing. But the thought of having something that was real and lasting, was both a dream and a fear. He pulled out his notebook and scribbled a few lines about hope, what it meant, what it looked like when it felt real. The words blurred on the page as his eyes filled with unused tears. His heart ached for what he was about to leave behind, and for the unknown that awaited him. But deep down, Tyler knew one thing for certain. He couldn't let fear hold him back anymore. That evening, Tyler sat in the small courtyard of the orphanage, watching the city lights flicker in the distance. He heard the soft murmur of voices from the other children as they finished their dinner. He didn't feel like part of their world anymore. He had felt different ever since Samuel had entered his life. There was a quiet longing in his chest, a longing for something more than the orphanage could ever offer. Just then, Miss Collins appeared in the doorway, her eyes searching for him. "Tyler, are you ready?" Tyler stood up, his legs shaking slightly. "Ready for what?" "The meeting," she said gently. "Samuel is waiting for you." The car ride to Samuel's house was quiet. Tyler sat in the back seat, his hands clasped tightly in his lap. Every passing block seemed to stretch longer, the lights outside blurring as the car cut through the night. When they arrived at the brownstone, Samuel was already waiting for him at the door, a warm smile on his face. Tyler stepped out of the car and walked up the steps to the door. Samuel greeted him with a handshake, firm but warm. "Come in, Tyler. You've made it." Inside, the house felt different from the sterile, perfect homes he'd imagined during his sleepless nights. It wasn't grand, but it was lived in. The walls were lined with books, photographs, and little trinkets that made the space feel homey, grounded. Samuel led him through the house, showing him the study, the kitchen, the living room. "Feel free to look around," Samuel said. "This is yours now, too, if you want it." Tyler wasn't sure what to say. He wandered into the kitchen, where a bowl of fruit sat on the counter. It smelled fresh, real. Everything felt like a step toward something new, something he couldn't quite grasp yet. "Why me?" Tyler asked again, his voice softer now. He hadn't meant to ask it, but the question escaped him. Samuel smiled and leaned against the counter. "Because you showed me something rare, Tyler. You showed me kindness without asking for anything in return. I want to give you that same chance, a chance to have what you deserve, a real family." Tyler swallowed hard. The truth hit him like a wave. "I'm scared," he admitted. "What if I mess up? What if I'm not what you expect?" Samuel stepped closer, placing a hand on his shoulder. "I'm not looking for perfection, Tyler. I'm looking for someone willing to try, to be open, to trust." Tyler stared at him, trying to make sense of the emotions swirling inside him. Could I trust him? Could I trust this? "I'll try," Tyler said finally, his voice trembling. "But I don't know if I can be what you want me to be." "You already are, Tyler," Samuel said with a soft smile. "You're already enough." That night, after dinner, Samuel led Tyler to a room upstairs. It was simple, a bed, a desk, a few bookshelves. But it was all his. The room wasn't much, but it felt like a promise, like the beginning of something new. As Tyler sat down on the bed, he realized he wasn't just accepting a new home. He was accepting a chance at a future where he could stop hiding, stop pretending to be someone he wasn't, a future where he could be Tyler. "I don't know what comes next," Tyler said quietly as he lay back on the bed, staring up at the ceiling. Samuel stood at the door, his silhouette framed by the light. "That's okay. You don't have to know everything right now. You just have to be willing to try." Tyler closed his eyes, letting the words settle into his heart. For the first time in a long time, he felt like he could breathe, like he could finally take a step forward. The next morning, Tyler woke up in his new room. The sun filtered through the curtains, casting a soft glow on the floor. For the first time, he didn't feel alone. For the first time, he felt like he had a place in the world. Samuel was downstairs, making breakfast, when Tyler walked into the kitchen. The smell of eggs and toast filled the air, and for a brief moment, everything felt perfect. "Good morning, Tyler," Samuel said, his voice warm. "I hope you slept well." Tyler nodded, a shy smile tugging at his lips. "I did." As he sat down at the table, he realized that, no matter what came next, this was his chance to start over. He didn't have to be perfect. He didn't have to have all the answers. He just had to try. And that, he knew, was enough. As the days passed, Tyler's adjustment to his new life unfolded like the first tentative steps of a child learning to walk. The changes were small at first, almost unnoticeable to anyone who wasn't paying attention. Tyler's initial sense of being a stranger in this new life began to ebb away, replaced by the quiet, steady rhythm of his new reality. Samuel had given him space, allowing him the time to acclimate without rushing him. He never pushed, never expected Tyler to fit into a mold. Instead, he simply showed up, day in and day out, with steady reassurance, kindness, and patience. Every morning, they would sit together for breakfast, eating simple meals made together in the kitchen. Samuel, with his calm presence, would make small talk, asking Tyler about his day at school, his feelings, and how he was adjusting. Tyler's answers were short at first. He wasn't used to being asked about his feelings, certainly not in such a genuine way. Most people who had cared for him in the past did so out of obligation, out of a need to follow rules. But Samuel, it seemed, wasn't bound by any of those limitations. He was just there, present and patient. At school, Tyler began to notice subtle shifts. The kids who used to glance over him, treat him as an outsider, now seemed to give him more space. He didn't join their conversations, but he no longer felt invisible. It was as if the weight of his past had lifted, and for the first time, he could see beyond the loneliness that had defined his life for so long. But there were moments, small moments, that still made him feel uncertain. When the teacher would ask the class to write about their families, Tyler still felt the pang of discomfort. His classmates would enthusiastically talk about their holidays and family dinners, while he sat in silence, unsure what to write. One day, the teacher asked him specifically, "Tyler, you haven't written anything yet. Would you like to share?" Tyler looked down at his blank page. The words stuck in his throat. For a moment, he thought about writing about Samuel, about how he was starting to feel like a family. But that didn't seem real yet. He wasn't sure if this was permanent, if it was real. Instead, he wrote simply, "I don't know what family is, but I think I'm learning." It wasn't perfect, but it was honest. When he handed in the assignment, his teacher gave him a warm smile. It wasn't a smile full of pity, but one that acknowledged the quiet courage in his words. Back at the brownstone, the days passed with a gentle cadence. Samuel would take him to the park, sometimes just for a walk, other times to kick around a soccer ball in the open field. It was during these walks that Tyler began to open up more, talking about the things that had long been buried deep inside him. The loneliness, the fear of rejection, the hope he had secretly clung to that maybe, just maybe, someone would see him. "I never thought someone like you would want me," Tyler admitted one day as they walked side by side, the afternoon sun casting long shadows behind them. "I mean, you're everything I'm not." Samuel stopped and turned to him, his face soft but serious. "And what is it that you think makes you different from anyone else?" he asked gently. Tyler shrugged, unsure how to explain it. "I don't know. I've never felt like I belonged. I'm not like the other kids, not like you." Samuel smiled kindly, placing a hand on Tyler's shoulder. "You are exactly like me, Tyler. You're someone who knows what it feels like to be lost, to feel like you're on the outside looking in. But I'm here now, and you're here with me. That's what matters. You belong here, with me, with this family. And nothing you say or do can change that." Tyler felt his throat tighten. He wanted to believe it, wanted to believe that this, what Samuel was offering, was real. But every time he allowed himself to believe, the doubts crept back in. What if it all fell apart? What if I messed this up? But Samuel's words lingered with him as they continued their walk through the park. The sense of belonging wasn't something that could be claimed all at once. It would take time. But for the first time in his life, Tyler felt that he might be able to build something here, something real. One evening, as they sat together in the living room, Samuel asked, "How do you feel about staying here for good, Tyler?" The question caught Tyler off guard. He had been settling into his new life, finding comfort in the quiet moments, in the simple routines, but he had never been asked to make a decision about the future. The words hung in the air, heavy with the weight of possibility. "I don't know," Tyler said softly, his voice tinged with uncertainty. "I'm not sure I'm ready. I don't know if I can trust that this will last." Samuel didn't pressure him. Instead, he simply nodded. "That's okay. You don't have to decide right now. Just know that whenever you're ready, I'll be here. And you'll never have to worry about being alone again." Tyler sat quietly for a while, absorbing Samuel's words. The notion of permanence scared him. He had always lived in temporary spaces, places where people came and went, where things were never truly his. But this felt different. This felt like a home, even if he didn't yet feel entirely at ease in it. The next few weeks brought small moments of joy. Sam taking him to see his first baseball game, the laughter they shared while cooking dinner together, the nights spent curled up with a book in the living room. Tyler had never known such stability, such warmth. But there were still moments of fear, of doubt, of wondering if he really belonged here. One evening, as Samuel was reading by the fire, Tyler sat next to him, the weight of the decision still heavy on his mind. "Samuel," he began, his voice unsteady, I think I'm ready." Samuel looked up from his book, his expression soft. "Ready for what?" "For this," Tyler said, his voice gaining strength. "Ready for this family. I'm ready to try, to believe that it's real." Samuel's eyes brightened, and he set his book down. He pulled Tyler into a hug, holding him tightly, not as a parent holds their child, but as someone who had seen the other's struggles and wanted to help them find peace. "It is real, Tyler. You're not alone anymore." Tyler closed his eyes, breathing in the scent of the firewood burning in the hearth. He felt something inside him finally begin to settle, to feel at home in a place he had once thought impossible. It wasn't perfect. It would never be perfect. But it was real. In the months that followed, Tyler's life continued to evolve in ways he hadn't expected. He learned to trust himself, to trust Samuel, and to trust that what he had found wasn't fleeting, wasn't an illusion. It was a family. And as the days turned into weeks and weeks into months, Tyler slowly began to understand what Samuel had known all along. Kindness, love, and family weren't something that happened by chance. They were built, one moment at a time, one act of trust at a time. Tyler was no longer just a boy lost in the streets of Manhattan. He was part of something bigger, something more meaningful. He had a place in the world, a place where he was seen, not just as an orphan, but as someone worthy of love, someone who mattered. And as he looked out over the city from the window of his new home, he realized that, for the first time in his life, he was no longer waiting for someone to see him. He had already been seen.